Welcome back, everybody. Just Mike here. Glad you could make it. Anyway, we have another cuckoo clock to work on, and it's a bit dry looking. So I think if you watch somewhere in this video where I'll wax the clock box itself, and you'll see from light to darker, which is absolutely beautiful. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and clean the movement too and whatnot. But first, let me show you what this clock looks like. This is a clock I have. It's highly detailed in the carving. And you can tell, well, besides being dusty, you can tell the light color of this. So this came with the topper. Let me set that on there real quick if I can. Now, first thing I noticed, this door I don't think belongs to this clock because it's dark and whatnot. I might have another door that I can change this with to look more like the clock. I notice his nose or beak or whatever you want to call it is chipped off of there, so we might try to repair that. We do have a cuckoo bird, and he has the metal feet, which is nice. Like I said, this is really dusty. And it did come with the pendulum, which is also nice. It has a piece of chipped leaf, which normally you're not going to notice where it came from unless you're really looking. This belongs right here, and we'll glue it back on. So on the inside of this clock, you notice the really tall whistle box. I like that because I think it gives a richer tone. The movement is irregular. This is the Schmeckenbecher movement. And it says made in Germany. It's a number 25. The number 25 pretty much tells you that this is a one-day clock. It does have the wire here that's supposed to hook onto this little U-nail there so you don't lose the topper. At one time, you can see a crack right there. This is re-glued on, so whether the topper fell off and broke or whether the clock fell off the wall and broke, I don't know, but it doesn't look bad on this side. So this clock does tick. I have the weights hanging on it. These weights are marked 275. I know that hands are off on timing, but this has been laying on its back for a while. So you can hear it's got a little bit of a problem on it cuckooing. So this type of stuff will have to be adjusted once the bellows are froze back into where they're the position they're supposed to be in, shut all the way. And like I say, it doesn't make any difference. These hands can be reset easily. Anyway, coming back to this, yes, it does tick. Yes, it does cuckoo, even though it needs adjustments done to this possibly. But I can tell that the movement is getting a little bit too dirty. Now on a movement like this, if this is yours and the clock's still running, if you wanted to, you could remove the whistle boxes so you can get the movement out, and just oil the pivots on the movement. And it doesn't hurt to have a can of air so you can blow any dust out that's in there before you oil it. But you oil this side, turn it over, oil the other side, and this clock should be good to go for another 3 to 5 years. Myself, like I say, I'm going to go ahead and clean this just to make sure we're starting fresh again. And realistically, every 5 years you should still take the movement out and oil both sides of it. So it's good to learn your clock. Take pictures before you take any of the wires off so you realize which arm goes to which whistle box. And it's just mainly pictures. What I do with the chain, if you're taking that out and you're just going to oil it, I'd wait till the weights are halfway down, so that way you have room to just pull this whole thing out, oil it, blow it out or whatever, and then slide it back in. Or you can go ahead and take the chain off and clean it so that way it's not dangling. Some people have a problem getting the chain back on, which is actually pretty easy. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the hands off and I'm going to free the cuckoo bird so we can get the movement out. There's a nut, a washer, the minute hand, and then here's a square hole that just slides right on there, and you notice the ridge on here. That's where your minute hand hole is supposed to set, in which it's supposed to be down in there. I'm not going to force it in there right now. It's supposed to be down in there, so when you put the washer on top and screw the nut on, it'll secure this, so it'll, when you need to turn it, it'll turn the movement and not just spin around. And of course the hour hand, you just grab it and you give it a little bit of a twist because it's wedged on there. And to get this door off, that there is just nailed in there. Like I say, I'd like to change it. Let me get a bigger screwdriver in here. You just kind of pry the door a little bit, because these cuckoo clocks are made of a soft wood. And if you had to put this same door back on, it'd be no biggie. Just look for your holes. Lift that up and then just push it down on there. Rock it down on. This also has a door lock on here that you lock the bird inside. That will keep him from coming out and cuckooing. So if at night that's what you want to do, is have a quiet house, I guess, you just lock it shut. But once you've had a cuckoo clock running in the house, you more than likely wouldn't even notice it going off. So to get the whistle box out, you'll notice a screw here, and hopefully you'll see a nail too. The nail is hammered into the whistle box in order to stabilize it so the whistle box doesn't rock. And so when you go to put this back in, make sure to hit all the same holes, because the more holes you stick into that whistle box, the more it's going to leak. So he took the screw out, and I usually push this in a little bit. Now you can take your screwdriver, and you see where that nail is. You can take and just pop it. You can just take and pop it off like that. This is a leather whistle box. It looks like it's in pretty good shape, but you notice, like I say, it won't go down all the way. That's because it lays on its back, and as you see, it opens up, and that's not a good thing because now it's going to start forming to that compared to if you had this thing clipped, which I'll show you. Give me a second here. I made these wires myself. It's just some cheap wire, easy to bend. And if this is still in the box, you can see that that's almost open too much. So you just shut it a little bit, push it on. Now it's ready for storage. It does not want to open. Or now that I'm cleaning this clock, I'm going to leave this on here to reform it to where it's supposed to be. And you can also take your screw that you just took out and stick it back in here. And it doesn't hurt to take your lift wire and keep it with this whistle box, because sometimes you'll have the whistle box the same, or the wire will be the same, or it will, one on the left side normally is longer, or on the right side, normally it's a little bit longer than the one that's on the left side. So it doesn't hurt to, just the same, take a rubber band and stick it on here, whatever, so that way they stay together. Now I remove this one the same way. I took the screw out. We'll push this in a little bit so we can get our screwdriver in behind, about the same place the nail is. And usually you can get that to just pop right off of there. Some clocks, depending on the brand, this will be a circle, and it's hard to get those off. You actually have to open the circle or deal with it over here, which this would be a little bit different also. But here again, you see how far this thing's open. It needs to stay down. Looking at it, it all looks good. So like I say, I just put my clamp on there. So now we can take the chains off. On a 1-day clock, I just lift it up a little bit, enough to get the hook out, and grab a hold of this piece of chain and put that in your little basket as well. Same with the ring. Just grab a hold of it, bend it up enough that you can get that out of there. Have the 4 screws out of the movement, and now you have to watch the cuckoo bird. They didn't get tangled up, but normally you can lift it up and work it out this way very easily. Now's the time when I'm going to take the cuckoo bird off, because I don't want to damage him. I'm not sure if this screwdriver is small enough to fit in there. Nope, need a smaller one. That's really too small, but it'll work. The cuckoo birds, you don't want to screw on very tight, because if you do, you're going to start deforming this. And if he has the plastic feet, you'll definitely, if it's not broke already, it'll break if you start pushing on that too hard. It doesn't take that much to screw him down. He just needs to be snug enough so that way the bellow, when it hits the tail, will make him lift and open his mouth. It's usually always the back side of the movement if there's going to be any markings on it, whether it's a cuckoo clock or any type of a clock. Some of your really old ones, they didn't even have markings on it. And of course this has nothing on it except all of that. So what you need to do now is, if you're going to take this apart and give it a deep clean, I already know where my hand shaft is. I'm going to point it down. I'm going to take pictures with it pointed down with my phone, so that way when I go to put it back together again, it's going to be setting like this, and I'll know the exact position of where these gears are supposed to be. So don't be afraid to take pictures, lots of pictures, extra pictures, pictures of this mechanism here that brings the cuckoo bird in and out. So you make sure you get the cuckoo bird shaft down where it's supposed to be, on the proper side of this here part here. Take pictures of your wired spring or whatever for the gong to see, oh, there's a hole there, and what they did is they actually brought it through, looped it around, and that's what I consider tying it, so that way it doesn't want to come loose again. Take pictures of, which your first picture should have shown it, but you have a short arm and a longer arm, so you know which hole those are supposed to be in. And it doesn't hurt to take a picture of this, and after you take a couple, well, the snail and this here off, that way you can see where these two arms here fit and which ones are supposed to go in first. Also, these arms, take a picture of that or pay attention to that. These have got those two clips on there for this arm and this arm, and so it's good to see where these extra clips are for you to have to take out. And also we have the spring here. Pay attention to your springs and see where they go. This one happens to be pushing down on this arm here. I could take this out of the way, but let's just take it off right now. This is just an extra helping hand to get this gear to be pushed down. Also, this is done cuckooing, and you notice in this Pac-Man, as we'll call it, area, this here that belongs to this, it's setting right down in the center of the Pac-Man's mouth. So that's an adjustment you need to make. So anyway, getting back to the spring, you just finished lifting it up and you saw where it was just cocked over the frame. So now we're going to go ahead and take this E-clip off. This E-clip, which is holding this disc or washer or whatever, and that holds this gear or snail down, so if you're pulling on the hands, it doesn't want to come out of there, which is a good thing. Normally these two kind of come out together because this usually gets caught between this gear and this plate. Some of them don't, some of them do. Yeah, it's holding on, so just pull the two off together. The object of the snail is when this drops onto the snail, that's what tells it what actual time it is, and this here will count the hour of whatever position this is in, that this little lever here dropped on here. And of course this comes off. And when you take these off, pay attention. This one happens to have a piece of brass here. Usually, lately the clocks I've been working on, this is a plastic gear. Everything's plastic. I don't like it. Such as there's a plastic gear right there. But just the same, make sure that the barrel is part of this gear. There are some clocks that is a spacer that's left on there that you have to take off. And when you flip your clock, it might fall off and you don't even know it. So pay attention to the lower part of this gear that was on here. So on the spring for the cuckoo bird, some people don't like taking it off. I don't mind. I do know this here and this here, the piece of brass. If you're rough with your clock, you might knock one of these off. Good luck getting it back on. You might be able to smash it back or set it back in there and then ping the brass to hold it in place. Not sure. I've never knocked one off yet. I try to be careful. But what you do to get this off, you're supposed to put a screwdriver in here, which that one looks like it's ready. This one here is in there tight. You put a screwdriver down in here. This camera will focus. And you pry it open just a little bit. This screwdriver is actually a little bit small. This one's too big, but I might get it in there. You pry it open enough that it's not going to put too much stress on this bar, and then you twist it. This spring is just looped around the frame. So I'm going to go ahead and take this wire, bend it back through or whatever. Once the wire's undone, now you can unlock, which you have to start with the gong. You unlock it, that little piece of wire, the short one, that's the lock. This taller one here, that's the one that this here star wheel hits to make it operate. But once you get that one out, then you have to take the next one out. It's the same way. Twist it and unlock it. Twist it and unlock it. What's really nice is this here star wheel has a screw on it. Some of your newer ones, they're pressed on there, and you can get them off. If they're pressed on there, I don't worry about it. I just leave it on there unless I need to work on the winder, if the winder's bad or whatever. And if it's pressed on there, you just start slowly working it and it will come off. Or you can start twisting it back and forth and it will come off. But usually they're on there pretty good. Okay, so the only thing I have left to take off are these E-clips, which I absolutely hate. But we'll get them off so we can get these bars out here. Now that we've got those two clips off, we can take these off. And like I say, make sure to get a picture of that so you can see which way they go in. Just lifts up a little bit and out it comes. This is your, I call it a 2-point star wheel, and this is what tells the clock one is shorter of a length than the other one, and the shorter one will tell the clock it's only on the half hour to cuckoo once. The other one will be longer and it'll lift the levers higher, causing it to cuckoo the proper hour once it hits the right one. So anyway, right now I think I'm ready to put on my fancy legs. You can use a dessert dish, a piece of plumbing or something like that just to hold this up. But I'll put my fancy legs on because I have them, and this way I can take these nuts off and try to get this apart to show you what the gears look like, because sometimes it's easier to look at that top picture than it is look at pictures through this way, which you can do it because that's how I used to do it all the time. But now that'll be a reference. I'll be trying to do it through the pictures of the top. Now let's take it apart if we can and keep it all together. Sometimes you might, especially if it's needing cleaned bad, you might have to push some of the stuff back down. Now we know this here normally is going to come out, so I don't have a heart attack about it, but we might be able to leave it in there this time just to show you. This here little piece of metal, wire we'll call it, that there's what the gong will be hitting against the stop. So now you can get a picture of all this, do different angles. Your winders you definitely want to take a picture of because they have to be in their proper spot. On this clock, you would, or this movement, right down inside here, which I'm going to show you as I take it apart, there's another E-clip in there that holds this gear, or it's not a gear, it's a lever here for the cuckoo bird. So we have a couple gears that are going to stay in here. One will be that's attached to the Pac-Man, and the other will be the one that's attached for the clock hands. So let's start on the time side first. This is one train, this is the other train, because they operate separately and they call them a train for some reason. And I'm just giving a quick look. Like I said, it actually doesn't look that bad. And it's easier to check your winder now. You gotta hold on to it, to the winder and to the top piece of it, and it locks good. I already tried it with the chains on there, so this is in good shape. I don't see any crack on my plastic wheel. Happy about that. So this actually looks pretty clean. You can see some of these gears here have got dirt in them. Sometimes you can't get all that out of there, and when you do clean this, if you tear it down this far, you can run a toothpick in there in each one of those and clean it a little bit better. But like I said, this here clock might have been a perfect candidate to just take a can of air, blow out the movement, and then oil each one of these. So this is all that was on the time side. Excuse me. This was all what was on the time side. And we're not counting this one. Because like I say, it won't come out because this has a, I guess we'll call it a washer that's pressured, fitted on there, that there's a spring here, and that keeps your hands from flipping around on you. It keeps them snug. So that's why that's there. And it's normal for it to rock. So let's do this cuckoo side. The fan, nice and stiff. Normally, if you can blow on it, it spins. That probably tells you your cuckoo clock sounds like he's hyper. And the way you would adjust that is you can pull this out by lifting this center one on this one, and these two bumps here, that's what you would smash a little bit to make it hold on to this tighter. So this one here goes to the Pac-Man. You can see it doesn't come off. These normally have 2 clickers. I almost think this one broke off because normally you don't see those, we'll call them gears there, whatever. It's fine as long as the thing's still holding. And they do have rebuild kits for these if you wanted to fix it. You'd have to get this pressure fitted washer off of there, and then this whole thing comes apart and you can change that if you wanted to. So we'll take this off. Now you notice it's got a divot. That's because it goes around this gear. That's because it comes around this gear here, and it's not supposed to touch it, but it needs to be around it. And right there's the E-clip I was talking about that you need to get off. And normally when I put this back on, this is one that most people either forget or whatever. If you want to add a little bit of grease to it, or just oil it well. Normally I put grease right on the bottom of this, and then after I install it I put oil in there, which, yes, clock oil is perfect for it. And that's all that's left. This here's pressure fitted on there also. I just as soon not be taking things off as I have to. This here is normal. They're not a super tight fit, so don't worry about that. And because this is a 1-day clock, they can have a lot more slop than what an 8-day clock can have. So anyway, let me get these things cleaned up in my parts cleaner, and I'll be back. Well, I got all the parts clean. The only one I polished was this one, and that's because if you open the back of the clock, you see it. Here you can see the Schmeckenbecher, the 25 meaning a 1-day. That's a regular. So anyway, time to get the phone out and put it together. I do have, now I do have everything over here that goes on the outside of the clock, and this stuff right here, and this piece, they go inside the clock. So let's put it together. Got the long arm in, the short arm in, and now we're putting in the hammer. And now I have to tie the spring up by putting it through that hole first. Now that I have those on, and I've already triggered this, it's done plain. Now I can put this on and set when the last cuckoo hits, I guess we'll call it. So in so many words, this will go gong, coot, coo. Oh, there's a gong, coot, coo. So that's where I want it. So now we'll test it out. Get a little more room here. Keep falling out of camera. I'm going to trigger this a little bit. Get a gong cuckoo. Gong cuckoo. Gong cook. That's not good. The coo hasn't dropped yet. So hold this. We're gonna loosen this screw so we can get that last coo in there. Coo. There we go. That wasn't much. Let me trigger this again. Just a couple. Oh, not a whole bunch. I think 4 maybe. Gong cuckoo, gong cuckoo, gong cuckoo, gong cuckoo. Beautiful. That last coo is right at the edge. That's exactly what I want. So that way when this goes into warning, it's already going to maybe start lifting this, but you only have just so much room. So now to put this back on, this back side needs to be on the clear end on the, or behind that lever. So this one's just about in. Popped it in. Popped it in. And it closes a little bit. And you test it. Make sure it's not so tight that it can't move. It needs to have some movability. And now I have to fight the spring around. Let me get my smaller screwdriver maybe, so I can catch the spring, maybe. Okay, it's got its, let me release this. Just a single hit seemed to do it. It's not very happy there. I'm going to bring it around one more time. Sometimes you got to worry, depending on which movement it is. Some of them don't mind the door slapping shut, and others don't like that one bit because there's too much pressure on the clock. And I'm happy with that. So I think I have all the parts on here. I'm going to install the bird. The bird is not going to be, we don't know exactly where the bird needs to be. We don't necessarily care. But we want him on here so we don't have to fight getting him on once he's in the box. So now all I have to do is loosen that screw and move him in the doorway or whatever I need to do. So I went ahead and took the frame off of this so I could wax clear underneath because it was so dry. And you notice how dark this is. I just got done waxing it and it's going to soak in. And well, let's show you the difference. I haven't done the topper yet. Does that show you something? So anyway, let me get this done and I'll show you what it looks like. So this is showing you, this is waxed, this half isn't waxed. That tells you how much this clock needed the moisture. Possibly this clock used to look like this, but I do know the more you wax it, to let it soak in, it seems the darker it gets. I had a clock that was, I thought was a blonde colored clock, I put the wax on it, and oh, it's beautiful now because it darkened up. I didn't really like the blonde look, but now beautiful. Here it is all done. Just got it done compared to this pendulum, obviously. So, let it dry overnight. Let's see what I can do with this thing. So I have it back on the box. And now, oh, and I got the door on. I didn't have a blonde door, so we have a dark door. Doesn't matter. It was a dark door already, but this one has more of the cuckoo clock look. For this type of clock anyway. So anyway, now I'll go ahead and get the movement in. The sad thing is, this didn't come with the back door, so I still have to order a gong and make myself a back door that'll fit in here. Now to get the chain back in, need to find out which way this turns. So it's going to turn this way for winding. So that means I have to put the chain in on this side and bring it around. Don't stick it in too far because you don't want it to tangle up in the gears. And you can take your finger if you want and wind it, or take a screwdriver if your finger doesn't fit and bring it around. I do a 50-50 split so each side is the same length for weight. Now we'll do this one. It winds this way so the chain will go in on this side. Fifty-50 split again. Now we can let both chains hang. Set this inside the hole here so it'll hold it. And now you can start installing your chains. So have your chains lined up. If you have a magnetic screwdriver, it helps. Just set your screwdriver in the hole, let the chain hit it, bring it through. And go to your next chain. And so on. And now you're ready to install this. You might be able to drop it down through this way as long as the bird will fit, otherwise you have to drop the bird in first. Get it into the hole, get your brackets lined up, and put your screws in. Now don't have a heart attack, but where the screws screw the movement down, they do have a little bit of a play in there. And there's a chance that you're gonna have to it will be this one here, the wire that you're gonna have to adjust so your clock can sit level and tick properly. Not the wire that holds the pendulum and it's sitting around here somewhere. Anyway, I just stick these back in here. I kind of straighten the wire out the best I can. One on this side will be the short arm. And then put this in, and this is the one we have to make sure is under the cuckoo bird's tail, which he's flipped all the way up, so I don't have to worry about that. And then you find the holes, the original holes for the nail and the screw. Again, these wires, you don't crimp them in, they just go in. I'll have to get them in right first. Hold on a second. You just put them in, and that's enough to hold it. Should be enough to hold it. I need to hang the other weight on to the cuckoo side so I can figure out what hour it is. Okay, that tells me the bellows or lift arms or whatever are hitting well, it helps. That sounds sick. It's like he doesn't have enough weight. But just to show you, the bellows do work. They don't have enough weight on them, which is odd. So I have to add weight on this side. So let me add some weight to them and see what I can come up with. So I added 1/4 to each of the bellows. So that doesn't sound too bad. At least it's cuckooing. And I have the handset. It could go over a little bit more, but I'm not going to worry about it. Let's check out the cuckoo bird. Because he's not set exactly right, but he might be. He needs to move over a little bit. Just a little. So when you're aligning things up, such as the cuckoo bird, for example, there's some certain frictions some clocks don't like. Now at the bottom where his feet are, normally you want to clear the doorway. He might not come all the way out, but just the same you want to clear that. You also need to make sure his head doesn't hit the top of the doorway. And when you move him further over to center him towards where the door hinge is, sometimes that's a problem because the bird, the movement or whatever, doesn't like pushing the door that far. Even though it's easy to move, that's just some things you got to watch about on your cuckoo clock on certain movements. So I'm happy with that. And like I said before, no, there's no gong because there's no back door, and I haven't ordered one yet. "16 inches from the tip to the leaf." Approximately 11, well, let's say 11 inches. Fixed his beak, fixed the back of his feathery head, changed the door, took it all apart, waxed that clear underneath, waxed this, waxed that. It's a darker clock now and not so dried out. And I lost 50 cents, a quarter on each bellow. So we got the clock fixed, had some issues, I cured them. The only thing I haven't cured yet, like I said, was the gong and get the back door made, which is easy enough if you got a saw and know where to order your gong at, and possibly the right size. Anyway, looks like the clock's going to be running great. I didn't have to adjust it for levelness because it's on the wall level and doing the proper tick-tock sound. Until next time, let's see what kind of clock I work on. Don't forget to subscribe because it's free. And until next time, God bless. Sneak peek.